it's saying that the city of Chicago is a corrupt organization. That is a wild thing, and to say that our whole entire city is corrupt, I think is a bit far-reaching based on the actions of a few individuals. I would hope that, as it goes through, that we find that these are just isolated incidences and not something that was, that is ingrained, I would say, in the departmental culture, and that there are other actors that facilitated this type of action if it proves to be true.
Well, wait a minute. How can you say it's isolated when we had 4 separate schemes? We had the post office, we had the Burger King alleged shakedown, we had the Charles Quee, the Lake Forest developer that allegedly was shaken down for legal business for Ed Burke. And then we had the business with the Field Museum where he wanted to get a job for Terry Gabinski's daughter. I mean, what do you think? Is the city of Chicago, for some people, some very powerful people like Ed Burke, who's the former finance chairman, the most powerful alderman Chicago probably has ever had, is it a criminal enterprise where people were quaking in their boots every time he called and they did what he told them to do?
Well, I think there's definitely a perception out there, locally and nationally, that we are a corrupt enterprise. Obviously, the federal government felt comfortable enough to put that in its complaint. But I think our goal has to be, what do we need to do to get at the heart of breaking that perception once and for all? And I know that Mayor Lightfoot thought that her executive order was going to be a great jumping point. I obviously have disagreed loudly on that point. The part where we always seem to get tripped up is this confusion between prerogative and the outside employment of aldermen. And that is something where I feel that the true nexus for where a lot of this corruption ends is the outside employment by aldermen. I believe there's about a dozen aldermen who have outside employment. Our focus for what we get paid and what we're elected to do should be on representing our people. And if that is our sole job, then people will believe that that is all we're focused on, and that the perception is all we care about is for the good of our community. And until we address that perception of constant corruption, no matter who we're talking about, whether it's a 50-year incumbent or someone who's just fresh onto the council, will never change.
So you're saying that if the aldermen who are lawyers are made to give up their practices, or consultants or whatever finder's fees they get, that will cure this? Do you agree?
Well, I think that what the points that have been made about Alderman Burke were specifically around the issue of outside employment, and attempting to use that as a caveat for it. I do think that if you remove that portion of it, it takes that angle off of the table. And it seems like everything pretty much revolved around that issue and revolved around one individual. But to say that the whole damn city is corrupt, I don't think is a fair statement, because it's all centered around one individual whose actions allegedly are designed to enrich him or herself. So to say that everybody, to say the whole enterprise is that, I think that's a big jump.
But you would go along with a ban on outside income?
You know what, I think that people need to look at their professional responsibilities and their loyalty and their oath that they took to represent the citizens of their wards and of the interests of the city of Chicago. And if those things are in conflict, then you need to make a decision if you're going to stay an alderman or deal with your outside employment. Now, to say that, for example, if your outside, as was mentioned before, Alderman Lopez was previously a sky cap before becoming an alderman. How does being a sky cap and being an alderman intersect? The challenge comes in when your business interests are intersecting with the fiduciary responsibilities that you have to protect the citizens. When those issues come up, I think you do need to say we need to stop that. But if you are, dog catcher or whatever, or you're doing something that has no conflict with the city, I don't think you should have to give that up.
What about Tom Tunney at Ann Sather's Restaurants? Doesn't he bring a businessman's perspective that's a good thing to have? Right,
but to say he has to give up his restaurants in order to be alderman, I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
Under state law, he had to give up his liquor license, but for him to have to give up his restaurant enterprise to solely focus on being an alderman, the statute doesn't require that. And again, the challenge is that we are a legislative body that has morphed into a quasi-legislative and executive body. And so while the code says that we're part-time, and if you really looked at committee work and legislative work on its own, it is. But the other stuff that we are not
services.
necessarily charged with doing, but that we do create an atmosphere of a full-time job. So if to the extent that it does not conflict with what you're doing as your official city duty, those are things you can do. But if it does conflict, then those are points that we need to address and make sure they don't do that.